Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to the second in our series of webinars for students and newly registered nurses. The session tonight is on Stand Out and Get Shortlisted for Your Dream Job. If you missed the first session, then you can catch that session on Catch Up, so take a look. That was where we were exploring a career in social care, so please do that. But a warm welcome to you, and I'm glad that you were able to join us this evening. We have got an hour together, and I want to introduce our guest speakers before we invite our first speaker to talk. There will be an opportunity for questions. We're going to create a pause moment after our first two, and we'll come on. I'll check the chat and the Q&As. So if you've got any questions or Q&As, then please pop them in, and or when we pause, if you want to directly ask your question, you can do that as well. Yeah, so without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers tonight. So with us, and in no order, no particular order, just as I have them on my notebook, I'd like to welcome Sam Crawley, who's the Chief Executive for Bracebridge Care Group. Caron, who is the Operation Manager for Canford Healthcare. Kelly, who is the Practice Development Matron for King's College Hospital, and Felica Kwaku, who's the Associate Director of Nursing at King's College Hospital. So I'd like to begin by thanking our guest speakers for their energy and time in prepping for the session, and I hope that you, as our invited guests and attendees, will enjoy the session as much as I have done in terms of getting to know our speakers. So any questions, please use the chat and the question and answers. And I think we should be okay. We'll check in with you as we go. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Caron Saunders-Crook to start us off.
Hello everybody. It's lovely to be with you on this very sunny afternoon. I'm going to attempt to share my slides, and please let it work. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can see that, Caron.
Lovely, thank you. But what is not happening is my notes are not coming up, but never mind, that's fine. We'll carry on. So today, obviously, I prepared just a very short presentation on standing out and getting shortlisted for your dream nursing job. I'm just hoping, just bear with me, it's not working. It will in a minute. There we go. Did that change?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Something happened.
And so what we're going to cover today is CV preparation and tailoring to match the job that that you'll be applying for. Essentials for a CV, writing a strong personal statement. We'll have a quick look at some common mistakes, interview preparation and common questions. And there is a handout that goes with this, which I know Christine is going to arrange to get sent out at the end. And just a point to note that some roles that you'll be applying for, they will also ask for an application form to be completed alongside the CV. And it's generally deemed good practice to not just attach the CV and to complete that, as you may not get shortlisted. As I said, the handout will be arranged after the session. So why does a strong CV matter? Well, it matters because it gives the employers the first impression of you. It helps you showcase your skills and experiences that you've learned along the way. It highlights your values and your professionalism, and it helps you stand out from other candidates. It individualizes you. And some essential sections that are included in the CV are personal details, obviously, a personal statement, which we'll go through very shortly, your education and qualifications, clinical placements and experience, skills and competencies that you've learned along the way, professional memberships that you may be a member of, for example, the Royal College of Nursing, and references, and you can add a photograph as well. There are many templates available for designing your CV. There's lots of things online, and Microsoft Word, which I think most people have got, has also got some templates on their platforms. But there's other things like CV Monster and things like that as well that you can access to create and design your own CV. Writing a strong personal statement. It explains to the employer who you are. It identifies and showcases your key strengths and your clinical skills. And it also shows what you can bring to the role. So that helps with the shortlisting. And also you can put in there your career aspirations. And I've got an example of a personal statement here, which I will read out to you for those that are haven't got a screen. So an example might say, compassionate and dedicated newly qualified nurse with a strong foundation in delivering person-centred care across a range of clinical settings. Through my personal training and placements, I have developed key skills in holistic person assessment, medication administration, and effective communication with multidisciplinary teams. I'm passionate about providing safe, high-quality nursing care, and I'm committed to continuous learning and professional development. I thrive in fast-paced environments and remain calm under pressure, ensuring optimal outcomes for the people I care for. Seeking a role where I can further develop my clinical expertise while making a meaningful difference in people's lives. So that's just a short example of what a personal statement might look like. It is a personal statement, so obviously it's going to be tailor-made for you. In tailoring your CV for each role, please make sure that you read the job description carefully and pull out key phrases from the job post and use them in your application. Highlight relevant placements and experiences that you've had, and place an emphasis on skills that match the role that you're applying for. Try and keep it concise to about 2 pages maximum. And you may be asked for a covering letter too. Not everybody asks for that. Some people just ask for the application form, but there are some jobs that you may apply for that will ask for a covering letter. And just a point to note, to have your references ready in the background, know who you're going to approach for references, and speak to those individuals and ask them if they'd be willing to provide you a reference for you, just so that you're not panicking at the last minute. There are some common mistakes with CVs. We're all only human, but it is good just to check and maybe ask a colleague to check for you as well. So spelling and grammatical errors, obviously you need to look at. Too much detail, or if the information is too vague and doesn't quite match the job description or the post that you're applying for. Not tailoring it for the job. Poor formatting or layout. A lack of showcasing your key skills and achievements. And obviously we're all in an AI age now, and I'm not saying don't use it, because it's got some fantastic benefits, but just beware that a lot of AI is based on American platforms, so some of the spelling of the words may be different. I know American platforms tend to use Z's where we use S's, for example, and another example is, things like if you were using words like behavior, the U's are missing, so just look out for things like that. So in preparation for your interview, research the employer, their history. If it's an organisation, a private organisation that you're going for, then obviously have a look at how the organisation has been formed and developed, what their values are. Understand the role and the expectations. Prepare answers for common nursing interview questions, and there are some of those available in the handout that will be shared with you afterwards. Review your CV and application, and again ask a colleague to look over it. And practice with mock interviews with each other as well. If you've got somebody that that's senior that has been involved in interviewing people, then it's usually good to sit down with them and ask them to practice with you the mock interview. And if there's an opportunity to speak to someone who has information about the position, then take it. Very often when you're applying for a post, at the bottom of the application information, it would generally say, for more information, speak to Mrs. Smith, and there'll usually be an email or a telephone number. And I would strongly recommend that you utilise that and just find out as much as you can, because you can find out what the priorities are for the people that you're applying for post for. You may be asked to complete small exercises or computer tasks, and I know that one of my colleagues is going to go into things like that a bit later on. Don't panic, it's quite commonplace now, but do be prepared for that. And part of the reason for that is that they can assess your ability to be able to use some of the systems that may be in place for your future employer. So some top tips for success: arrive early and dress professionally, and take a copy of your CV with you and any supporting documents. Use clear and confident communication, and demonstrate knowledge of nursing standards and professional boundaries. And always prepare about 3 or 4 questions, so that if they're not answered throughout the interview process, you've got something that you can engage with your potential employer about afterwards. And that sums it up for me. Thank you for listening to me and for having me as part of this this webinar today. And just one point about believe in yourself, and your future employer will too.
That's really lovely. I love the quote in terms of how you've ended there, Karen. There's quite a lot of information there, and you're getting some comments there in the chat already around thank yous. And I just wondered, we've got a few minutes then. I know this isn't what we agreed at the beginning, but I just think there's something about, responding. I'm wondering whether there's something that others might want to say, some of our other presenters might want to say. And just while you're having that dialogue together, I'm going to check the chat to see. I think we might have a question as well.
Cool. I'm happy to come in there if you're happy, Karen. I saw that you mentioned AI, and it's really interesting, isn't it? There's a lot of AI being used at the moment, and I just want to make sure that everyone joins and understands that ChatGPT in particular has added watermarks now. So there's embedded watermarks on everything that ChatGPT does. So
Wow.
there's particular programs you can get to unembed them, but just so everyone knows that now you cannot get away with just cutting and pasting from Word into Word, because it will show, and they've used a different space between words as well that we can't use on our computers. So we just need to be aware of that is, and I think students going through will really need to watch for that, because the last thing you want is to just show that that's it. Kelly, have you come across that?
I'm actually sifting applications at the moment. I've received 719 of them.
Wow.
So you can actually see applications that has been submitted in a very similar format. And for me, I think as the person that's sifting the applications, what it doesn't demonstrate is the characteristics of the person, and them as the sifter you become quite where's the person that's applying for the job. And I think you want to see in your applications the kind of examples of how they've met these criteria, how they just a snippet, doesn't have to be song and verse as Karen said, but just some evidence of who they are, what experiences that they've gathered, whether it be personal life or professional life, who is this person that's applying, because you can absolutely tell.
Okay. Wow, lovely. And we've had one question. I think it's appropriate to just pose it now to Karen, and others might have a view as well, but just saying, how many references should we have? Thank you, Abby, for that question.
Most employers ask for 2 references. What they will also ask for is obviously identification and covering of any gaps in employment, which if you're newly qualified, obviously that won't apply. But most people ask for 2 references. What I would say is have a backup of 3, just in case somebody's off sick or somebody's on holiday or somebody isn't able to submit your reference in a timely manner for you. So at least you've got somebody to go back to. And I think just to pick up on the points that Samantha and Kelly made about AI and use of AI, we appreciate that you know, there will be people that are fresh from training applying for positions. We don't expect everybody to have all the answers, because we're learning every day. And I think, you know, if you've got developmental needs, it doesn't hurt to highlight those during your interview process, because as employers, we would be looking to support you in your development anyway.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks very much.
And thank you all. There, Christine,
yes.
Can I come in? Thanks for that, Karen. I just to add on around the reference issue. Lots of organisations, if you're applying for a position where you're already employed within the organisation, they often only ask for one reference. So just to bear that in mind as a consideration. And for people asking for references, it's just advice is to get somebody that's senior to you and not a friend. So somebody that can give a really good, unbiased, reference for you. So those are the things I would just add.
Okay, can I ask one more question just on behalf of Tanya, which says, for the references, can it be a practice assessor or supervisors from placements, or just mainly from university?
My understanding is from dealing with recruitment that it will be the university. They provide an academic reference to say that they attended, and whether there was anything from a professional point of view, whether there was any breaches of professional standards. So yes, it's university. You can be asked for character references, so it mainly be that's where the supervisor, practice assessor can provide character references. But remember, you're only on placement for anything from 4 up to 12 weeks, and that doesn't give enough time from a employer referencing point of view.
Lovely, thanks very much. Thanks, Ken. Lovely, and you've been thanked for that. Okay, so I'm wondering now if we move on to our next two speakers, which would be Kelly and Felicia. Thank you for that. And also, nice to hear the questions. Keep on coming. You can see that our speakers don't mind. So ask anything you want. There's no bars on that.
Okay, great. So my name's Felicia. It's evening here because I'm not in the country, but great to be here with everybody. So myself and Kelly are going to do like a duo. So I'm just going to build on really what Caron had already started. So the other things. So I'm a senior nurse in the NHS, and I understand that any of you on this call are either newly qualified, or you're qualified, or you come from across the healthcare landscape. So we interview all the time, weekly sometimes when the demand is up. So what are we looking for? I think what's really important, what one of our colleagues just said, is that we're not looking for perfection. Absolutely not. But we are looking to see what your character's like as part of the interview process. If you're coming into nursing or you're new into nursing, we want the right people that have got the right kind of ethics, the right kind of morals, that are passionate about the profession and passionate about patients. I think it's really important to understand when you come to interview, when you're applying for a job, that you want to do it as well, that you have a passion for caring for patients, a passion for working with colleagues. So it's really important that you understand what your character is about. Okay, you're right for the profession. Is this what you really want to do? Because we can kind of sometimes sense those things when we're interviewing people. So, what's your character like? Is your character suitable to profession? I think we build on also those issues around your application form. So we often look at the form. We've talked about AI. There's also something about your application form demonstrating and reflecting who you are, what your personality might be, how are you thinking, what's your thought processes. So if you are writing your application and you're just listing your jobs, you're just listing what your qualities are, it's a bit like a shopping list, and it's not really giving us a flavour of your personality as it comes across on the paper. Remember, we are kind of assessing you at the interview stage. So try not to put lists of jobs. put about you write your job, and then what is it that you've kind of excelled? How do you think you fitted in that role, and what your roles and responsibilities are? We are looking also that you turn up at the interview, especially professionally. So that includes coming in and looking smart, having a good appearance. We need to be able to ascertain that you're taking the interview and the job that you're applying for really, really seriously. So please, be mindful of appearances. I think there's also something about authenticity. So are you coming with your authentic self? Now, that's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Because you're coming in front of us for interview. You want to put your best face forward. And so you might be mindful of your language. You might be mindful of your posture. You might talk in a slightly different way, but we want you to come and be authentic in the context of applying for a post and presenting yourself at interview. So authentic self, be who you are. You can still be who you are, but give really good answers to the questions. And remember that the interview process is a competitive process. I always think that when I'm applying for a post and I'm looking at the person's spec, I often will just take each item of the person's spec. The person's specifications are the desired or essential criteria in the job description. And I will often just look at each item and then just write the example of how I fit that particular criteria. If I don't fit it, because remember, we're not looking for perfection. If I don't fit that particular criteria, what kind of thought process do I have about how I could fulfill that item on the job specification if I was successful in this job? So remember, we're looking at your potential, yeah? And often especially if you're new, we're looking at, okay, this person that's come for interview, how can we develop their potential, or what potential are they demonstrating to us at the interview? There is something also about your currency, or sometimes currency or agency. You may have heard that term, you might not have. So when we talk about currency or agency, what do you bring to the interview? What kind of qualities are you bringing into the profession? What kind of qualities are you displaying if you're already in the profession already and you are taking the step up? So what do you bring? What do you have to offer? How do you stand out? Remember, these are not high-level things. How do you stand out? If you are applying for a role and you've been a student nurse, how do your mentors, the managers, what makes you stand out from other student nurses? What makes you stand out from other people that might be going for the post? Is it how you approach your work? Is it your level of compassion? Do you know how to manage stress? Do you understand what the patient needs? Are you compassionate towards the patients? Do you understand how to talk to people? It's even things as simple as, do you understand the limits within your practice? Are you able to ask for help? Yeah. So if you're in a really sticky situation, do you recognize where your limitations are? And can you ask for help? Can you take criticism as well? Remember that sometimes if you're being critiqued, it can dent your pride. But the thing about nursing is about your ability to reflect. And we want reflective practitioners. We want to know that, if you step outside of your lane, sometimes can you take the criticism? And then the other things are around preparedness. And Kelly will go into that in a bit more detail. But we can often tell if you're not prepared, okay? And by preparation, if I'm going for an interview, even at my level, I will have 2 or 3 practice sessions with somebody that I trust and somebody who I know will give me really honest feedback about how I come across at interview. So that could be my diction, how I enunciate my words, how I make contact during the interview. Do I inject a bit of humor? Am I so nervous that I'm paralyzed? Remember, if nerves is fine, nervousness is absolutely fine. But if your nerves paralyze you and you cannot come out and answer the question, then that's not good for you. take deep breaths. You can ask, if you're so nervous, you can ask, can you say the question again? That's absolutely fine. What we want of you is to really demonstrate your best at interview, because how we assess you is from your application form and then how you come across to us at the interview. So be nervous, okay? But we don't want the nerves to actually wipe you out. And I think the last thing I would say is that in terms of preparation, I always think it's really good as well to demonstrate whether you are well read or you've done some reading as part of your preparation. So have you read around the organisation? Have you read about nursing? What the things that should interest you? Are you able to talk about that during the interview process as well? So I think I will stop there, pause, and I will hand you over to Kelly.
Lovely, thanks, Kelly. Just before you come on, can I
Yes.
just ask you, because one of the things that you shared before was that you've got 700 applications.
Yes.
And what I was wondering, as well as maybe saying just a few tips on interviewing, because the next webinar will look more at the interviewing, is help us to see as well, what is it that you look for with those 700? How are you going to drill them down? I think that would really be useful as well.
So my tips from an application sense is looking around how all of the different experiences, whether it be, as I said, there may have been your previous nurse life. I mean, I worked in recruitment and I worked in HR and I've done all of these other different things. That was pre-nursing, but they were all relevant. It's looking at what you're working in Sainsbury's, that's customer service experience. Working in the bar, again, that's dealing with people, that's liaising with customers, serving tables and all the rest of it. So it's about looking at all of your experiences and drawing all of them and looking at how we're looking at transferable skills. And I think we don't actually do that so well because we're thinking, well, we've done our degree and we're now off to do our nursing. I've got the degree, the piece of paper that says I can be a nurse. And I think that it's those different skills that you have gained along the way in your journey that has allowed that allows you to evidence the kind of experiences. And I think it's about having those listed out in I have really good communication skills, and then give an example, as I said, not song and verse, but just an example of, when I was on placement in an AMU, that it was quite frantic. It was a Friday afternoon and it was really busy and there was a distressed patient. I managed to calm down. Just something small that gives you, gives the person that's sifting a real sense of you. And I think that's really key. Often the ones that get sifted out quite quickly is people that are quite slapdash with their applications. It's not finishing full sentences, abbreviations, but not explaining what abbreviations are, not utilising the descriptor when you put in your employment history, the kind of duties that you perform. Utilise those boxes, because, there is only a certain amount of words that can be used in the main body of an application. So I think the cross between what's in the key duties as well as what you've performed in terms of your evidence against the criteria. I as a sifter, I look at both, and I think it's really key. There's stuff that there's so many courses and online things that you can do now online that you can actually supplement your application. So again, think about where you're applying for. There's Skills for Health and all kinds of resources on the RCM websites that you can do, to build your portfolio up. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years, that when I'm applying for different positions, I look at the kind of the area of which I'm trying to specialize in, and what other additional supplements of learning can I do to help with my portfolio. Grammar, massive, and I think if it doesn't read well in terms of structure, bullet points is an absolute no for me. I think it's as Felicia was saying, it doesn't give me nothing. There's no substance to the story about you. This is your story. And lastly, I would say to you that look at the person's specification. So for me, I look at a person's specification of a job I'm applying for, and I highlight all of the criteria. And sadly, I have a spreadsheet rather than a document, but I actually list about all of the different things. So those are actually on placement now and up until the summer of when they finish, and going forward throughout your career, have an ongoing list of different examples that best suit communication, team working, evidencing about, caring, compassion. These are things that we are always looking for as even if the question slightly changes and the requirement slightly changes as you go up the ladder. These are pillar stones of what it is to be a nurse, whether you're a band 5 or an 8A, 8D, 9, you still need all of those types of examples. So you will need to, have a little book, spreadsheet, anything to just capture some of these examples that you have had on placement or have had whilst working in the bar or in Sainsbury's. Write them down when you've dealt with a difficult customer, when you dealt with a challenging situation, when you've had to, escalate an issue. These are the kinds of things that we will ask you for at interview, but it's also somewhere where you can identify it at the application stage. For me, in relation to the job, when you're applying for the role, I tell my students where we are, I tell them, think about what your 3-year plan is. And I know you're all thinking about just getting the job, but actually you need to make a real thought behind where you're applying. I say this because we often get a lot of moving of nurses around that transfer from one registered nurse position to another, and actually think about what is the goal. If you want to be a clinical nurse specialist around wounds, thinking about, could you get that experience in the community and working through as a district nurse and then moving into being, wound specialist nurse in the community? Or if, for instance, you really want to become an asthma, specialist nurse, again, working in an acute respiratory ward to then work through to get all of those experiences within an acute setting to then progress to become, a respiratory nurse and go up the ladder that way. Again, you can still move around. I was a mover. I moved around lots of places, but it's just to put that thought in before you actually apply, because I think it does drive, and you can certainly see the passion of when we're in the application and in interview stage, when they have a real foresight of where they want to be and how they want to progress, and then then that shows the employer this person wants to stay with us because they really want to progress and to move up the ladder, and that's retention. We want those kind of nurses that are really driven. The last thing I would just want to add before my time is up is read around the employer, not just the generic, I say, Kings or, Barts or wherever. Read about the ward or the speciality you're going into. There's nothing that rings in my ears when I hear somebody has done their reading around being a gastro nurse, being, the kind of placements that they've had, and they've drawn on their experiences from when they had a placement on respiratory and they really loved it, and they've actually brought those examples to interview or within their application. That really does, for me, shows that they thought about the role they've applied for, they've drawn on the experiences that they've had, and they've applied it in a setting which evidences that they're the best person suited for the role. And I think I will leave it there.
Wow. Oh, wow, indeed. I mean, that's great. Really poignant, and I think some good information from both you speakers that adds on to how Caron started us off. And I'm sitting here thinking it's really rich, and I can see Sam in the background nodding to your last response there. So Kelly, thank you so much, and Felicia, thank you. We've got two questions, and I'm inclined to maybe just take them and then move to our final speaker, Sam, because I think that might give our attendees that opportunity to take everything in and then be able to come back with any questions that they might have. So the two that I've got, and again, if other guest speakers want to come in and answer, that's fine. Just really, I think it's a query, and you might, but Jacqueline said, why do we not get a response to our why do applicants not get a response after they've submitted an application? Just wondered what your thoughts are.
Well, they should do, Christine. So it depends on the organisation. In some of the systems, and Kelly or my other colleagues can come in, as soon as you're shortlisted, and the shortlisting form goes to the central recruitment office, there will be an automatic alert or email to the person who's applied. So many of the systems are automatic. I think if you don't have those kind of slick systems, then it's dependent on manual systems, and sometimes that automatic alert and notification doesn't always go through, but they should. If you've been shortlisted, it will go through. Sometimes if you're not shortlisted, then sometimes that can be a problem as well. But if you're definitely shortlisted, it should go through automatically.
Yeah. Sam and Caron, and I'm inviting the both of you because again we've got two sectors. We've got acute and then we've got social care, and I'm just wondering if there might be any differences.
Well, no, you should definitely get a response. That's rude if you're not getting a response, actually. So I would say we all hold each other to account on that, and we should all respond to people who take the time to apply. So yeah, there shouldn't be a time where you don't hear. It's just not okay. But don't be afraid also, I would say, don't be afraid to say, I've applied, tell me what's going on. I had a lady a couple of weeks ago come to me through an agency, and her CV wasn't all that. So I was kind of, you don't get no, she really wants this. But then she emailed me twice herself. I said, no, I am right for this job. I need you to see me. And I said, well, sort your CV out then, because it's not a good for a shop window. And she went, okay then. And she sent me a new CV, and she sent me more detail about the why, because it's always about the why and who the person is. And then I met with her, and actually she was fab. But it just shows you that, so tenacity, I was kind of, actually, I'm going to see this one just because she emailed me twice and said I am the right person. So I wouldn't say don't back down if you know it's right. You should always get a response.
How
absolutely
lovely.
agree.
Yeah, your CV
Christine,
is your shop window. Go on, Felicia.
Can I also say that you can ask feedback as well.
Always.
So I think it's important for people, especially when they don't get shortlisted, and we might, and if we have a big recruitment drive and then we don't short a lot on some of the automatic systems, sometimes we will write notes. So when we are not shortlisting, we will write a little note about why we haven't shortlisted. I know not all systems do that, but there's a few that do, and I think it's important for the person who's applying to know why they didn't get shortlisted. If they want to know, then we would encourage them to ask, and we often take detailed notes when we are shortlisting, and we can give feedback as well.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Felicia. And I think the last one, just a general one, I think we may have answered it, but I'm going to answer it again. But I'm sure it's Abby's asked earlier on about using her practice assessor, because her practice as a reference, so just going back to the reference, is it appropriate to use her practice assessor as a referee because she's applying for a speciality and one of her practice assessors works in that specific speciality? What are your thoughts?
I would say that unlikely. So normally with references, they have to cover employment over 3 years. It's either 3 years or 5 years, depending on the organisation. So whilst you can have it there, it would be a character reference should you not be able to cover some of the time, but the duration period that you'll put in, you're probably better off putting the academic university where you actually study for the full 3 years and cover yourself off. Is that universities provide a very basic, they went to uni here, there was no concerns, there was no disciplinaries, there was nothing in contact in relation to your conduct whilst on placement and whilst in uni, and then they cover the 3 years. So I think it's easier from that perspective, unless it's requested from the employer. specifically for that particular area of specialty.
Lovely.
So
Thanks very much.
my answer in the chat was, so I see CVs that talk about feedback from placements and feedback from PA. So just a little quote from your PA on your CV on that speciality can really impact, because that's kind of, oh God, hold on a minute. So the PA thought she was really good. That little small quote can really impact whether or not you'll be seen by somebody. So if I see somebody who has had a placement, who has had really good experiences in, say, a dementia space, and I'm then looking at somebody for a care home with people with dementia, I'll go, oh, hold on a minute, that's good. So she's been picked up there. So you don't always have to write a big thing. It can be just a little quote from that person, and it can have huge impact. So I would say use the quotes on your CV that way.
Okay, lovely. What I'm hearing is use the space wisely. You've got a small amount of space. How are you going to use it? That's what I think I'm hearing. Lovely. So I'm going to invite our guest speakers to leave the screen and only Sam to stay, and then we will move into this final piece, which I think will just be the cherry on the cake. We've had the cake, we've had the icing, and now we're going for the cherry. And Sam is going to be talking about emotional intelligence and the use of assessment centres. Thank you, Sam.
Hello, everybody. So yes, so I mean, it's very difficult to follow my colleagues really, because they've really covered an awful lot of you know, what emotional intelligence really is. And Felicia and Kelly talked about you know, being prepared to be vulnerable and understanding that you don't know everything. And so what we do is we have, before we even interview you, we would invite people into an assessment centre where we are assessing whether or not that individual has emotional intelligence at their core. And that's hard to define, I suppose, but I suppose the key thing for me would be, if somebody is emotionally intelligent, there's going to be integrity, and integrity is really key for nursing. It's really key for looking after people, because we need to understand what that person is going to be like when the door is closed and there's just them and another a vulnerable person. So that's really, really important. So essentially what we do is we bring everybody to emotional intelligence assessment centres, where they're asked to do lots of different things. I won't give everything away, because if you ever do come, then you'll know all the little tricks. But on our website, people are asked to answer some very different questions to what you might come across in other spaces. So we ask questions like, have you ever talked to a stranger at a bus stop? Or have you ever danced in the rain? And what we're looking for there is, are people willing to go a little bit out of their comfort zone? Are they willing to be able to stretch that self-truth to be able to tell us who they really are in that situation? So that's, you know, there's other questions, but I won't go through them. So then during the assessment centres, we talk, we discuss who we are and what our absolute core values are, and we talk around inclusivity being at the core of everything and of who we are. But what we're looking for from people in the assessment centre are people being real. And I know both Kelly and Felicia talked about that, and Caron actually, about showing up as your true self. It's really, really important, because we can tell when people are not. We can tell when there's a mask on. We can tell when people are not being wholly themselves and are not comfortable about being themselves. We've got some little games people play, but mostly we're testing how people are interacting with other individuals. We grew this assessment centre. I'm a master practitioner in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So we grew this assessment centre from that basis, that actually all humans are equal. All humans have a right to speak and be heard, and all humans have something to give us and something to teach us. So if we go from that foundation, and that's how then we move forward into the assessment centres. There are some people who are exceptionally well educated and exceptionally well read, but do not understand how to take a moment and allow other people to speak. There are people who lead naturally, and there are people who don't lead, and either one is okay actually. So you don't have to be a leader and you don't have to be a non-leader. What it's about is giving other people the opportunity to say who they are and what they are. In the assessment centres as well, we're looking at language use. So we're looking at labelling language. So do you know, is the person going to label every person that they meet, or actually are they going to look at the individual as a person? There's some things thrown in there, like really silly things, like somebody always falls, for example. We have somebody who literally falls over onto the floor. And what we're looking at there's 5 different people assessing, with people who live in our care homes and with people who work there. And what we're assessing is who responds to that naturally, who's going to go and help that person off the floor, which is great. There's always another set of people who giggle. So they're people who you don't want looking after your mommy, you know what I mean? So if somebody falls, you don't want people who giggle. You want people who are going to go naturally to go and look after people and support people. But the people we're truly looking for are the people who check that person an hour later and say, are you okay? Do you need anything? They're the people with true emotional intelligence, real empathy, to be able to look after people. And that's really what we're looking for. And there's other things like that happen in the assessment centre that people are not at all aware of, but that's what we do. I think for me, I'm just going over some of the things Felicia and Kelly said. So I can't remember which one, but one of you said, ladies, that people need to be, real and need to be themselves. For me, this is absolutely key. And I think if somebody's being real and being themselves in an interview, you're not in your comfort zone. You're not, because you've got people asking you questions. You want to put across your best self. You're really kind of, a bit nervous often as well. So I think it's perfectly okay to say that. It's perfectly okay to say, I need a moment. I need to take a pause, and use the power of pause when you're asked a question. And we can see this in people if they're able to breathe in, take a moment, answer a question. And we're looking for that in people. We're not looking for the perfect answer all the time. What we're looking for is people who are really thinking, really considering their experience, considering what they have experienced in their career and outside their career, and then bring that to it. And I loved what Kelly said about taking your experiences from work, maybe at Tesco or the local shop, or, wherever it is you're working, because that's really, really important. I think for us as well, having emotional intelligence running through the core of everything we are and everything we do means that we're going to question ourselves. We're going to assume we're not always right. And actually, it's okay not to be right, and it's okay to ask questions. And I know each speaker has talked about that, and the ability to reflect. I think for us, I run care homes across the country. Caron has care homes where she is, and the other guys are in Kings. It's an amazing place. So, but each of us would each say that we want to ensure that we have somebody who understands that they don't know everything, and they probably never will. Sorry, I have my dog here. And probably never will understand everything, and probably won't always have the answers. In fact, definitely won't have the answers. I'm a CEO of this business. I do not have all the answers. I've got people around me who help me make the right decisions, who are really good at what they do as well. And I think that that's important, that we don't try and, appear to know. If somebody tries to pretend or appear to know something, that for me would be a complete, this is not going to work, because emotional intelligence also helps you understand who you are in the world, where you stand, where you are, and where you need to grow. And that ability to reflect and ability to be able to stand back from a situation as well and look at what's happened or what you've done and go, oh, okay, I could have done that differently. We could have done this. And across every part of the sectors, or both acute and in social care, reflective practice is really important. It's something that we do all the time, and not being willing or able to reflect on something and see where improvements could happen, because most of the time something can be improved if we really and truly reflect on that. So it's really important that we have people who are willing, not only willing to do it, but really use it as a part of the toolbox that they have as they grow in their careers. I think the other thing for me is around trust. So we're all, each of us, everyone on here, we're trying to build rapport and we're trying to build trust. And trust is very hard, isn't it? As humans, it's very difficult to build that. And especially in the acute sector, you've got moments sometimes to build that trust, and it's hard. So we need people who are going to truly show up and know when they can and know when they can't, and that's really, really important. And so we build trust that way. We build trust in our colleagues by going to colleagues and saying, you know, I heard you talking about that, tell me about that, I don't really know about that. Or, you know, I've been asked to do this and I really don't know. And it's okay not to know. And it's okay not to know as a student, it's okay not to know as a first year, and it's okay not to know at 25 years, because if it's something new, it's something new, and we can all grow and we can all learn and we can all develop. And I think without that integrity, without that space inside where we're really challenging ourselves as humans to show up, we won't do that, and that's a very dangerous person to work with. So we really need people who are truly focused in on who they are, where their vulnerabilities are, where they're wonderful too, and really utilize those two things in the right way. I think the other thing for me was, you know, it's hard when you're coming up and into your first year and you're trying to kind of, you know, choose your path. And I think something that one of the team said was that, you know, talk about where you want to be, you know. And I think I love to hear people tell me that they want to be the CEO of this company in the future. I love people like that. I really want to know. But it's already, what I want to know though is that a wish or is that a plan? So a wish is just a wish, and a career plan is something that has actually got milestones attached to it and what you're willing to do to get there. So I think if I hear somebody say, well, actually, I want to do this, I'm willing to do this, this, and this, I'm learning this, I want to do this, that's a really good mindset to come with. So somebody who knows they're going to need to learn a lot, but that they want to get that way, and they have really an action plan on how they're going to get through those steps. And it's also okay not to know exactly what you want to do. It's perfectly okay not to be sure that this is exactly where you want to be for your whole career. Careers, and oh, sorry, my dog's moving again. Careers change, people change, and that's okay. And different experiences you're going to have throughout your career will actually help steer you into maybe a different direction. You know, you're going to learn something that you didn't know and go, oh, actually, that's really good. And I think that's really important. I think I love the fact that somebody said well read. So I listen, because I'm in the car a lot, I listen to a different development book every week. Every week of every year, I listen to a book, and I learn a lot from that. But it also helps me bring that into my team and my colleagues. And I think for me, when I hear people being able to articulate their why am I doing this? Why is it that I am wanting to meet these people? Why do I want this particular role? And what will this role do for the rest of my career is really, really important. And I really want people to be able to articulate that why and really understand that. And the other thing I would say is I would really push people to read two books if you could. One would be Simon Sinek, Start With Why. That's literally what it's about. So I think if you could listen to a book, if you got Audible and listen to a book, that would be fantastic. In our organization, we give away Audible to all leaders, so they get Audible free, and they get different development books to listen to. And then the other thing I would say is just do not be afraid to push yourself forward, but always remember the reason you first did the application into nursing school, and try and articulate that when you're in interviews. Because actually what drove me was when I was going into nursing homes when I was 8 doing Irish dancing. What drove you might be something else, but it's really important that we understand the you behind the decision to start this in the first place. And it's a good reminder for you as well when days are tough. I know why I'm here and I know where I'm going. Hopefully that's helpful.
That's really helpful, Sam. Really helpful. Thank you so much. And I think you've done a really good précis of the things that we've covered within the webinar this evening. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite all our guest speakers to rejoin us. I've got one question, and then I want to just open it up to our attendees. There might be some other things that they want to answer. Now, I've got a question here. I'm not sure. I might understand it, I might not. So I'm going to put it out so that, oh, did you know what? You've given me permission permission to be able to say, I don't know if I know this. Thank you. I think there's just been so much in what everyone shared. And I think what I thought was lovely, and I think, Kelly, you might have said this, is it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're applying for your first job or you're thinking about being a band 9, there is something in what you've said for everybody for the breadth of your career. So let me ask the question, and then I want to come back and say the 2 things that I'm going to take away while our attendees might be thinking about questions that they want to answer. But it's a general inquiry about practice assessors recording with the NMC. How long does it take for the role to be recorded? Now, I'm not after completing the training, and does the NMC charge an additional fee? But I think that's probably about your registration once you've qualified. I think that is what that is. Have I got that right, Jacqueline?
Okay, cool.
Check the chat
Sorry,
for me. If you all
you.
just look in the chat, you would see that question if I've got that right. But I think that's the question.
Assessors aren't registerable on the register. Is that the
The-
question? Is that the query, Caroline?
No,
Sorry.
no, let me see if I can. Jacqueline, are you there? Maybe you can help us with your question. Ah, I understand. So I think that question is, I would say it's probably more how quickly can you get that job as a registrant once you've got your PIN? That is what I think that is, because the attendee is worried about the potential lack of jobs available for new registrants. And so how quickly will they get their PIN?
So
I think
from time when they send off send it off, it's normally 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay,
For
there you go.
for the returning of PIN. I know that normally NMC, unless it's going to be longer than that, NMC do normally notify you, but the rule of thumb is 4 to 6 weeks.
Lovely.
From the time when the university sends off for submission of their transcripts, it's normally 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much. There aren't any other questions, and there isn't anything in the chat. I wonder whether I could just quickly just do a little summary of the things that I think that you've said, and I'm not going to make it long-winded because there's a couple of minutes that someone might want to ask a question. But the thing that I thought, I mean, everything was rich to me. So I think even if you attended this tonight, I would invite you to rewatch it on the playback. I think that you talked about the transferable skills, and I think that's everything was important, but that was significant because it made me think about people might be doing voluntary work, they might be helping out in their church, there's lots of things that people doing outside of work, and you can bring them in. I love the book recommendations, Sam. You've only given us 1 book title. Drop the other one in the chat. You told us start with why. You said there were 2 books. I don't want to miss out on that, and I'm sure our attendees won't. I also love that notion of the CV as your shop window. I was like, well, not that I'm writing it at the moment, but if I happen to be writing mine, I will be considering that. I think that's really, really great. And also that in all seriousness, you talked about it being competitive, and it is competitive. So why wouldn't you want to show up as your best self? And I love that thing. It reminded me of when I started my own nursing journey. I was enrolled nurse, and I had a little green book, and everything I did, I wrote in that little green book, and I've still got it. And I look back and it fills me. But I think there's no reason why I can't have a little green book now. So I'm inviting everyone to get a little notebook, whatever colour you fancy have. But I think capturing your experiences as you go along, because actually then when you need to record something, you just look in your little book and it's there. There's so much more that I could say, but I'm not going to. I'm going to open it up to you as our guest speakers to be able to just say, what would be the last thing that you want to leave people with while I check the chat? Over to you, in no particular order. You know each other now, so you go.
Jacqueline was trying to tell us something, but her mic is disabled, so she couldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, she couldn't ask that, but hopefully we've covered that. But I'm not sure. Cool.
Christine, I think, are you asking us? Are you asking us as the panel?
I'm asking you, but I've got a question, and then if there's anything else, and we've got 2 minutes, and I must thank you. So you got 1.5 minutes. Someone says there's no silly question here. If they complete the application online via NHS Jobs, do I still need to create a CV? They generally tell you no. Felicia's saying no. Yeah.
No. But I do feel you should have one.
Definitely.
How many times I've left it for years and years and years, like, oh God, I've got to update it. So actually have one in the background ticking along that you can just update, that just sits on the desktop, so that when you are ready, there may be a position that just pops up and you think, oh, this is the one for me. You know, always have something there that is, you know, you update over a period of time.
I agree with that.
I'm saying
Thank
that
you.
many people that have been long careers don't have CVs. So,
No.
you know, I don't want people to be pressured.
No.
It's good to have, depending on the particular, it's good to have, it's good to have, but some of the healthcare landscapes don't require that, but it's good to have. But if we're going to ask that, we need to make sure that perhaps many more people have it, because even people 20 plus years, they don't have CVs as well. So
I think it's useful to have, because I noticed when you talked about a gap, and recently I've applied for a course, and I sent my CV, and when I sent it, the person assessing the CV said, "Oh, you've got a gap," and I was like, "Have I?" She said, "Yes," and she told me exactly where the gap was, and I thought, oh.
Yeah. And
so
we check,
it's worth keeping a note.
Absolutely.
I am so mindful. It is 6 o'clock and I can't believe the time has flown. I really want to thank all of our attendees. Thank you for giving your time and energy. If there's some questions that haven't been answered, I'm going to put my email into the chat. Then email me. If I can't answer it with myself and the team, then we'll definitely get back to you. So do that. I want to thank Will Tomlinson for helping us with our AV, Patricia Marquis, because she's online. She is the director for England. But thank you, Patricia, for being here. It's nice to see you and to have your support. Most of all, I really want to thank our guest speakers, Sam, Kelly, Caron and Felicia, and in no order. You've been totally amazing and I've loved hanging out with you. For all of our attendees, please don't forget that we've got our final webinar on May the 8th, and I so hope I've got that date right. Yeah, May the 8th, I think Kelly nodded. Thank you for that note, Kelly. And that interview is about that webinar is about how to ace your interview. So by then you've been shortlisted and you are getting to the interview, and how are you going to do it? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a good evening. Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.